There's something quietly intoxicating about playing Carrion for the first time. Not because it startles you with jump scares or tries to shock you with gore, though there's plenty of that, but because it makes you complicit in something dark, alien, and hungry. Most games ask you to save the world. Carrion, developed by Phobia Game Studio and published by Devolver Digital, invites you to unmake it. You begin not as a hero, nor even as a villain in the traditional sense, but as a writhing mass of tendrils, teeth, and instinct. A creature birthed in secrecy, forged in experimentation, and now loosed into the bowels of a sprawling underground facility. From the moment you break free from containment, the game unfolds in one long, deliciously fluid motion. The perspective is side-scrolling, the art pixel-based, but the way the creature animates, slithering through vents, crawling along ceilings, squeezing through grates with unsettling ease, is rendered with such grotesque elegance that it feels almost graceful. Like a silent underwater ballet where every limb is a razor and every movement is predatory. The world you navigate is a cold, clinical labyrinth of laboratories, containment zones, and abandoned sectors, each space oozing a quiet, oppressive tension. There's no dialogue, no exposition dumps, no mission briefings. The story is told through the environment, through the panicked screams of scientists, the sterile lighting of corridors, the ever-growing stains of blood and biomass you leave in your wake. It's minimalist in narrative delivery, yet deeply atmospheric, encouraging a kind of environmental storytelling that rewards careful observation. And that silence, the absence of hand-holding, deepens the immersion. You are not here to understand. You are here to be, to spread, to reclaim what was stolen. And yet, as your mass grows, fed by flesh and fear, the game introduces unexpected layers of vulnerability. Carrion's mechanics are a masterclass in inversion. Traditional Metroidvanias revolve around a central figure gaining strength through upgrades, new weapons, gadgets, or skills that let them overcome increasingly complex obstacles. In Carrion, you begin powerful, dangerous, able to tear humans in half with a flick of your tentacles. But as you progress, you unlock new abilities not to grow in size alone, but to adapt, mutate, survive. Your form shifts. You gain the power to shoot webs, possess human bodies, become invisible, throw spines like darts. But these powers are tiered to your biomass. Some abilities can only be used when you're small, others when you're at full monstrous bulk, forcing you to strategically discard parts of yourself in pools of viscera to solve puzzles. This mechanic of size's skill becomes one of the game's most fascinating dynamics. Sometimes being larger makes you a walking tank, capable of obliterating security drones and bursting through barriers. Other times, your bloated form becomes a liability, unable to slip through vents or activate small switches. So you retreat, regrow, ebb and flow like a tide of flesh. There's something quietly brilliant about how this fluctuating identity mirrors the creature's existence. Ever-changing, undefined, surviving by mutation. The puzzles themselves strike a delicate balance between spatial logic and kinetic timing. You're rarely stuck for long, but the game trusts you to experiment, to observe. There's a kind of tactile satisfaction in the way you slither into a vent, loop around a corridor, and burst out to ambush a guard. Stealth and brutality intermingle, with combat often feeling like a creative expression of your malevolence. You don't just kill, you perform it. Grab one soldier and swing him into another. Possess a panicking engineer and use him to unlock a door before snapping his neck. Hurl objects as distractions or weapons. The physics engine here is simple, but expressive, and it lends a kind of playful cruelty to your options. What elevates Carrion beyond mere spectacle is its subtle artistry. The pixel art, while restrained in palette, is rich in texture and contrast. Backgrounds are layered with detail: flickering monitors, blood-slicked walls, shattered glass. Every level has a visual identity, whether it's the sterile labs at the game's beginning or the overgrown tunnels later on, choked with biomass and flickering red light. The world feels lived in, then broken apart. You, the player, are both explorer and entropy. The sound design is especially worthy of praise. The creature doesn't speak, but it groans, growls, and shudders with unsettling wetness. Your every movement leaves a squelch, every kill punctuated with a crunch. The ambient music, composed by Chris Velasco, simmers beneath the surface like a distant hum of dread, occasionally erupting into screeching violins or throbbing pulses when the action intensifies. But mostly, it waits. And in that waiting, the game builds tension more effectively than any jump scare ever could. For all its chaos, Carrion is a surprisingly contemplative experience. It asks what it means to be a monster, to be hunted, to be created and caged and then set loose. And through scattered flashback sequences, unlocked by reaching hive nodes and interacting with memory fragments, you glimpse, briefly, a past. A purpose. The game never fully explains the creature's origin, but it offers just enough to stir questions. Were you an alien? A lab-grown weapon? A god? Or merely the byproduct of human arrogance? There's a kind of elegance in the ambiguity. The developers wisely chose not to over-explain, trusting players to interpret. It gives the narrative a lingering presence, one that echoes even after the final sequence fades. Speaking of which, the game's ending is both inevitable and haunting. I won't spoil it, but I'll say this. It doesn't blink. It doesn't flinch. It completes the circle of horror in a way that feels both poetic and grotesque. The credits roll not with triumph, but with silence. And you're left with a strange mix of satisfaction and unease, as if you've just woken from a dream too vivid to forget. Now, no game is without its edges. Carrion's primary criticism often comes from its navigation system, or rather its lack thereof. The game has no map, no waypoint system. For some, this enhances immersion, encouraging exploration and memory. For others, especially later in the game when backtracking becomes more complex, it can lead to disorientation. It's a valid point. There were moments I wandered in circles, unsure where to go next, the visual sameness of certain areas blending together. But in a strange way, even this feels intentional. You are, after all, a creature, lost, escaping, consuming. The facility isn't your playground, it's your cage. And finding your way out shouldn't be easy. Replayability, too, is somewhat limited. The main campaign can be completed in around 4 to 6 hours, depending on how thorough you are with exploration. There are hidden upgrades, biomass containers, and ability amplifiers that reward curiosity, but no alternate endings or major divergent paths. However, Carrion doesn't overstay its welcome. It's concise, focused, and tightly designed. In an era of bloated open worlds and never-ending progression trees, that brevity feels like a strength. From a technical standpoint, performance is rock solid across most platforms. The game runs smoothly on PC and consoles with responsive controls and minimal load times. The Android port, surprisingly, captures much of the experience with intuitive touch controls and a sharp visual presentation, though I'd still recommend playing it with a controller if possible. On mobile, the precision of movement and interaction can sometimes feel a bit floaty, especially during combat-heavy segments. But even in its mobile incarnation, the core essence of Carrion, the sense of becoming an unstoppable force of nature, is preserved. Monetization is refreshingly honest. This is a premium game. You pay once and receive the full experience. No ads, no microtransactions, no gimmicks. In a mobile landscape littered with energy bars and loot boxes, that alone feels like a rebellion. Carrion fits within a lineage of horror games, but it stands apart through perspective. If Resident Evil is about surviving the monster, and Dead Space about dismembering it, Carrion is about being it. It draws subtle inspiration from John Carpenter's The Thing, from Lovecraftian themes of unknowable biology, and from Metroidvania structure, but blends those influences into something wholly its own. It doesn't try to be scary in the traditional sense. It simply is. Creeping, spreading, growing. A side-scroller not of platforming, but of presence. There's a strange intimacy to playing Carrion. You're not just controlling a character, you become it. You begin to anticipate the reactions of enemies, the layout of ducts, the texture of walls. You start to think like a monster, not out of malice, but instinct. And in that transformation lies the game's most powerful magic. In the end, Carrion is more than a horror game. It's an inversion, a slow, elegant descent into role reversal, a quiet meditation on what it means to be alien and to be feared. It's bloody, yes, and grotesque, but also beautiful in its way. Methodical, atmospheric, unflinching. And when you set the device down and the screen fades to black, you might still feel it, somewhere in the back of your mind. That wet slither, that churning hunger, that silent truth that just for a while, you weren't the hero at all. You were the dark, and you were free. All right, friends, that's it for today's adventure. If you had fun, don't forget to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and join our cozy little gaming family. We'll see you tomorrow with more gameplay. Until then, enjoy the gameplay.